Matthias Scherer's words, Norway provides the true character of ice climbing. That is to say, you can always find adventure, from single pitch up to vertical kilometer ice flows. Outside of popular destinations like Rjukan and Hemsedal, you will rarely find a line that has been picked out. Depending on where you go, from the 1,000-meter ice falls of Gudvangen, to the 1,700 fjords that fracture the coastline, to the Arctic ice of the far north, you are very likely to have a first ascent-like experience, if not an actual FA. And of course, there are plenty of beginner and intermediate-friendly areas too. Rjukan, for example, has hundreds of easily accessible climbs. This is Matthias's second time on the podcast, and if you recall, he joined us last year to talk about his home Cogne, another epicenter of ice in Europe. This time around, in classic Matthias style, we discuss why so many of his top 100 ice climbs are in Norway, the history of ice climbing in the country, classic routes and areas, logistics for planning your own trip, and the upcoming ice festival in Rjukan, which runs from Thursday, February 6th to Monday, February 10th. We'll get to the conversation shortly, but first, a quick message from our sponsors. Gloves are essential for winter climbing, and with Anu, you're in good hands. As a boutique climbing brand, they only care about making the best ice climbing and dry tooling gloves around. There are no shareholders to report to. They earn their keep with an uncompromising pursuit of durable, dexterous, and waterproof. That's because it's part of the heart and soul of the company. It starts with decades of establishing first ascents on ice and mixed lines, combines generational glove-making know-how, and is topped off by a belief in sustainability. The result is ultimate care for the craft of climbing and design. To learn more, check out their gloves and story at anu.com. That is ANIIU.com.
If you're listening to my voice right now, it's because for you, ice season never really ends. It just kind of blends into the next route. Every off-season climb you do is training for the next swing, scratch, or kick. Wouldn't it be cool to never stop ice climbing? Well, Furnace Industries has the ice climbing training gear and dry tooling equipment you need so you can just keep going. They have gym-safe indoor ice climbing tools and the largest variety of dry tooling holds in America. There's replacement picks and front points and all kinds of winter goodies. With their gear, it's always ice season. Check out more ice and dry tooling gear at furnace-industries.com.
So for a little bit of context, you live in the Osta Valley, which is one of the epicenters for ice climbing in Europe. But still, every winter you make it a point to go to Norway. And you actually have a top 100 list of your favorite climbs around the world. And 3 of the top 5 are in Norway, including number 1 and number 2. And so this is a long way of asking this question, which is, what makes Norway so special for ice climbing for you?
First of all, I think it's the true character of ice climbing. It's like the adventurous character, the unknown character of a climb. So in Norway, it's rarely that you find a climb that will be picked out, hooked out, or even climbed before this season. So that means you have to evaluate everything yourself. You won't find belays. So you have to be the full package alpinist when you climb there. Talking about the number 2 and number 1 and number 2 climbs, I mean, these climbs are situated in, probably from my knowledge, one of the most insane places for ice climbing, the Gudvangen Gorge, which has 1,000 meter high walls. And so the Kjærskattkvelven is a nearly 1,000 meter high ice climb with proper grade 6 pitches. It's a in between alpinism and ice climbing. Of course, it's ice climbs, but you are so long, it's so big walls, you can say that it's already beyond this. And then the other climb, like the Middagshoftenfossen, that's just these surreal ice pillars that I haven't seen in anywhere else. So like from the commitment and from the whole ambience, it's extremely impressive there. And Norway for itself, the human brain, I think, cannot get it. What Norway means for ice climbing. It's like a little bit if you look up to the sky in the night and you see all the stars. It's the same with Norway. It's impossible because 1,700 fjords in Norway, over 50,000 kilometers of coastline. And you can say in every fjord, at least there's 10 to 15 ice climbs. So you can do the math by yourself. So what I learned over the years is you have to focus on some places. Do not get too much distracted. But also have an open eye, and that's what I said. The Kjærskattkvelven, for example, I never heard about this climb before. We just drove to Gudvangen. We wanted to climb something else in Lærdal, and then we see this line, and then we go on this line. And that's what I love, because that goes back to the original spirit, I think, of ice climbing. You have no information. You have nothing. You know nothing about the things. You just see and do. This is, I think, what drives me back every year to Norway.
There's the very, very adventurous side, and there's also Rjukan, which we'll talk about a little bit more in depth, which is more well known and another epicenter of ice climbing in Europe. But sticking on sort of the adventurous side of things, I guess the local ethic is not to necessarily talk about and even name many of the climbs in a lot of these fjords. Did you encounter that? Is there still? I mean, obviously, there's a lot of first ascent potential. Regardless, there's first ascent experience each season, just because a lot of this is not even being climbed. But yeah, do you have a sense of like how much has been explored in those different fjords along the west coast and then more north too?
Yeah, there has been exploration, but it's also a little bit the problem to get information about what has been climbed and not. Therefore, I think it's also so important to bring the Rjukan Festival back, and I hope that the Norwegian community will join again, because that's where the place where I got my information, for example, because Kjærskakreven first ascent has been done by Marius Olsen, the guy who organized the Rjukan Ice Festival. And so that was always the point, to meet strong Norwegian climbers, get more info, what has been climbed there, what has been climbed there. I mean, you can be sure major lines have been climbed because there is quite a big ice climbing community, but they are kind of, in Norway itself, they don't talk too much to each other. So it's always kind of, I'm always very slow in saying, okay, that was a first ascent, because maybe somebody climbed it already 5 years ago or 2 years ago. But yeah, you can say in the fjords all over the west coast, there has been action everywhere. But of course, I mean, it's impossible that everything has been climbed. No way.
Who would you say climbing in Norway is for? Is it for beginners? Is it for the adventurous folk? Is it for everybody?
So I would say it's for beginners in Rjukan. Absolutely. Because Rjukan, there is a guidebook, there is kind of easy access, there are bolted anchors. This is a place like Cogne, I have to say, or like Field in BC, in Canada. Very easy access. The advantage of Rjukan is, compared to Field, where it's high avalanche danger sometimes, there's some places they are quite safe. Rjukan is the only place I know where I would recommend really to beginners to go. Everywhere else, you need to be already kind of a seasoned ice climber in order to have fun and to climb safely.
Okay. And then I know obviously the conditions will vary a bit, but what is the general season in Norway?
So general season, I mean, depends where you go. I mean, up in the north, you can start climbing in November, but you will be in the dark, which is not dark. I mean, it's also something that a lot of people don't understand. I mean, of course, it's kind of a twilight, but it's a twilight. It's not that we are completely there and in a full black night like we have it here in the Alps or in Canada. So with a good headlamp, you can climb up there, and their season starts, end of November, and then a little bit more up in the mountains. I mean, in Rjukan, there is some places where you can also start already in November because they are high up. This is the point with Norway, since we are starting from sea level and are so far north. As soon as you go over 600, 700, 800 meters sea level, like here in the Alps, over 2,000 meters, you have freezing conditions very quickly. And then in the spring, it goes on till end of March. But of course, then what comes is then the sun gets so high and it's not more going down, and then everything is melting out pretty quickly. So I would not go too late to Norway to climb.
Okay. One thing, in talking with you and reading again, like your articles and seeing your videos, you have this really strong appreciation for history. And I really enjoyed this video you did with Thomas Karlström. Ice climbing, at least from what I saw, it dates back to the early 70s in Norway. If our interview about Cogne is any indication, I'm sure you have a lot of insight about history. But could you just share a bit about the background for ice climbing in Norway?
Yeah, of course. I mean, ice climbing in Norway it goes back in the 70s. That was this decade when big lines like the Hytnefossen has been first ascended by Marius Morstad and his partner. I mean, Hüttenfossen, to say it right away, is kind of this well-known big ice climb, which is in Hemsedal, which is in the south of Norway. It's more continental, it's higher up, so therefore it's very like steady conditions there. It's a little bit, I climbed it 4 times, and every time I remembers me of being up on the trophy wall above Banff. It's like, because you're very prominent up there, so it's a really cool place. So it was done by Marius Moschta in 2 days, and then Thomas Karlström did the first ascent in a day. Did the first pitch, then he fixed the rope, jerked up the next day, and then he did more, or did the first 2 pitches, and then he climbed the upper part. So that was the way back then. And then, of course, there was Americans coming to Norway. Henry Barber came in the 70s, in the late 70s, and he did probably, for me, one of the most insane ascents for this period. Like, because it's the Vettesfossen. And the Vettesfossen is still one of my projects, I can say. Tried it several times. Never worked out because it's such an incredible climb. It's, in fact, Vettesfossen, if you Google it, you see it's one of Norway's waterfalls with the highest free drop, 280 meters of free drop. And this thing forms like this nightmare column with this huge egg at the bottom, which is 60 meters high, and you climb behind. So you're really dwarfed by the dimensions there. And so Henry Barber came and he climbed this line in the late 70s. I think he had 6 ice crews. I mean, if you can talk about ice crews back then. And what I heard from Barry Blanchard, he was telling me once the story when we talked about him. So Barry told me that Henry put clister wax on his wooden mittens that he would glue on the wooden shaft because he didn't use leashes. So Henry was climbing Vettesfossen already in good style, leashless, but with the clister on his wooden mittens. I can only say everybody who has a chance to see Vettesfossen, fingers crossed, it might form again someday, because this thing needs a lot of cold weather. I mean, of course, there's all over Norway history. There's in Romsdalen, there's history of doing first ascents there, and then in the 80s, and then coming up to the north. And then, as I said, then Marius Olsen, he was the guy who really started to push for hard routes, like with Kjærskatgreven in Gudvangen, then with Kjærak, then up in the north, he climbed Finkona. So he really ticked some of these like super cool lines. And then, of course, in Geiranger Fjord, if you Google it, there are the 7 sisters. And they have been first ascended by Americans too. I don't remember the name, but it was also, I think, early 80s. So there has been action, and serious action, you have to say, because this is serious climbs. This is the most serious ice climbs you can find on the world.
Yeah. Looking at Vettesfossen, 300 meters, WI5? What with
No. This is not 5. I don't know who's riding 5 there. Whoever rides 5 there has no idea about ice climbing grades and has definitely been not climbed, or that's just a bragger. Because you are just, I know it from other climbs like this. You will feel during the whole climb the vibrations of the water between your crampons, because there's so much water pressure inside this thing that the whole thing is shaking all the time. We have to have, because Fossen means in Norwegian very big waterfall. And so, for example, we climbed other Fossens like Hauksfossen in Rjukan, and there the thing is all the time like you feel it shaking from the water inside. And a Fossen is always scary. It's always big, and Vettesfossen definitely ticks in with a solid grade 6. Yeah.
With the water pressure, is there fear of, well, I guess it's cold enough to sort of slow sort of pressure buildup, but is there fear of just sort of like explosive?
Yeah. No, I mean, explosive, not in the sense that this whole thing will burst asunder. But of course, with Vettesfossen, for us, the problem was always, I mean, you have a slight change in temperatures, and there's huge daggers. We are talking about rocket-sized daggers. So when you walk to these climbs, you're walking kind of a field of debris, and of course, that makes you sink. And you have to sink. You have to be super careful. The slightest change in temperatures can result in big structures collapsing. And so the days you can climb this safely are very, very few. As I said, I had several attempts on Vettesfossen and it never worked out. The only way to do it is by experience and studying very carefully the weather systems and be there in the right moment. There's not a lot of days where you can do these lines.
Speaking of another Fossen, you mentioned Hidnefossen. You mentioned Karlström climbed in a day. And you've climbed this multiple times. You ended up meeting him and talking about history of his ascent. And I'm wondering, what did you learn from Karlström in that conversation? And I think you ended up climbing the route like the next day or shortly thereafter. How did that experience change for you, after talking to him?
What changed for me, the experience, is the age just doesn't matter. I mean, Karlström is already a little bit older, but you see there's the same passion, the same desire for adventure that connects us. And that's what I mean. That's what's driving me back to Norway, because there I find this true spirit. And it will never stop. Like, generations can go to Norway and will have the same. And with Thomas, what I found so fascinating is that his work as an engineer and product designer, I mean, he invented the Hexentrick, which we all know and probably don't love so much because friends are a little bit safer, but still a good Hexentrick sometimes is a great thing. So he was inventing this thing. And then, of course, he worked as a product designer for Norrøna. And when he met Henry Barber had, when he did the first ascent of Vettisfossen, he had one of the first prototypes of Gore-Tex. And so late 70s, and then Thomas saw it, tried it out, and then suggested to Norrøna to use this material. And then he designed right away in the early 80s the first prototype of an ice climbing jacket without pockets on the hips. And so you can say Thomas invented this modern style of climbing jackets all other brands are using, like we all know, and also the bibs with it. So that was kind of the birth moment of the bibs and the jacket without pockets on the hip for ice climbing. And since we went there to do this film with Norrøna, and I'm a sponsored athlete by Norrøna, and I have this jacket, it's a cool feeling when okay, this jacket is in the development over 40 years because the Trollveggen jacket never changed the name. The Trollveggen jacket came out in the early 80s, and now we are 40 years later, and it has evolved over all these years. And that's nice because it puts everything kind in a historical perspective. And yeah, I love it.
So you've talked about what you appreciate about Norway, but when did you actually start going? What was like the first time, and what were you looking for then?
I mean, first time was 2012, and what I was looking for is big lines. I had read already about Vettisfossen, about Hütnefossen, a little bit about Geranger Fjord. I heard about Rjukan, of course, and that was our first destination. We went up there with a camper van to spend several weeks up there. And so we took the ferry from Denmark to south of Norway, drove to Rjukan, and climbed like the obvious lines. They are more interested for expert climbers like Jufsøla, Lipton, and all these things. But there was also the festival, which was great because I met Marius Olsen there, and then he gave me good insight and said, okay, this is good areas where to go. This is good areas where to go. And then we drove on to Hemsedal. Then we climbed Hütnefossen. And it was like impressive. So it's kind of the gateway, I think. We took the classical gateway to Norway. Like, you come from Rjukan, you drive over to Hemsedal. Don't make the mistake to follow Google Maps because everybody is doing it first time. And then you end up on this road that suddenly turns into a cross-country slope in winter. And then you have to drive back everything, which makes you like 4.5 hours driving for nothing. So you drive back to Kongsberg and drive to Hemsedal. And then we went over to Lærdal, climbed something there. And that was our first trip. And then in the next year we came back and we went right away with the ferry to Bergen because we wanted to climb this one big line in Lærdal. And on the way to Lærdal, we drove to the Gudvangen Valley, and that's when we saw this big, huge ice line. And we said, okay, let's do this. And that's Kjærsgaardskreven. And then on the way from Gudvangen back to Rjukan, where we were invited for the festival this year too, we drive to Eidfjord and we checked this place, Jølmo, and we saw this huge ice climbs up in Jølmo. I said, okay, we have to go there. So we came back the years after and we climbed up in Jølmo. And then you see it goes on and it goes on. And so you see there's something, and then Mabodal, and then you want to climb here. And then we have never been up to the north, so we went up to the north and we climbed there, and we found this great partnership with a local guy who's running a hotel up there, Tuolungmo. Hotel has a perfect place next to awesome places to climb, like the Flogget Lake with the Flogbecken, this great ice climb. Quick approach, you walk over the lake, and then you have this awesome grade 6 ice climb. So, and big lines there too in this area, like Skretbecken, over 700 meters high, and Robbenbecken, and so, and also close to Senja. So there we built a partnership with Tour, founded a company, Arctic Mountain Adventures, where we do guided ice climbing and ski touring up there
Cool.
And so this is how we developed our thing in the north. And then of course the Arctic Ice Festival is what we do since 2020, which is a great way for everybody to join, because on one side we do clinics, on the other side you can also join as an autonomous climber, and we just give you some beta where you can go, and then you go, off you go. Because there the potential is for everybody, from advanced ice climber to super expert climber and beginners. Of course, in the clinics, there's enough stuff also easy, but you just need to know where to go. Yeah.
When is the Arctic Ice Fest this year or next
The
year?
Arctic Ice Festival is end of February, beginning of March for 4 days. You can check it out on arcticicefestival.com. And we will be there. And yeah, it's always a great time up there. Like climbing under the Northern Lights is special. It's an awesome place. Absolutely. So north of Norway. And especially the Bardøyjord. So this area there is big ice, like big ice lines. Yeah, when you go down on the road, it's always the mistake a lot of people do. They think, oh yeah, it's small, and then no. Norway is never like this. You think, oh, this is a quick climb. It's just a 20-meter column, and then at the end it's a 50-meter thing. And yeah, already the approach is like 300 meters long to get there. So it's big days.
Yeah. It seems like the proportions are just hard to gauge.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Because I mean, the numbers you're throwing out, 700 meters, 900 meter routes.
Yeah.
It's hard to fathom. Well, so you're part of the Arctic Ice Festival, which is end of February. You're also helping to organize the Norrøna Rjukan Ice Fest in the beginning of February. So if folks really want to make a whole go of it, they could really spend the whole month, well, a lifetime there, but all of February.
Yeah, I think there's some guys, at least I know there's 2 guys, they are going to Rjukan Festival and come then up to the north. And I think it's great a way, because you will discover a very historic site of Norway. Like Rjukan is a historic ice climbing site, well developed. But then when you come up to the north, it's completely different. This is like wild ice climbing there. And of course, like the whole ambience will change completely. Like before on Rjukan, we are more kind of in a canyon. It's closer, but then we are getting in these vast valleys with these huge Arctic mountains around you. The Arctic scenery is very intense. Like a lot of people, they are just like intimidated by the feeling the Arctic is creating on you. It's not for nothing that the NATO is bringing all their soldiers up there for training, because the Arctic really tests you deep inside if you're tough.
Can you describe that more for yourself? Like, because you've been in a lot of hairy situations climbing in a lot of different like challenging environments. So for you to say that means something in particular. So what do you experience when you're up in the Arctic?
It might sound strange, but somehow you're closer to the universe, if that makes sense. The power of nature is extremely strong. Like you have a very, very deep feeling of the beauty, but also the violence this power can do on you. So if there is a storm, oh yeah, like you might not getting down from these climbs. I don't know about what Patagonia, but the ropes are going not more sidewards, they're going upwards when you try to rappel. And then the temperatures, of course, can be brutal. This is also what makes the Arctic so special, is like this very quick changing weather. You can have on one day rain, and then next day you can have minus 25 and blistering storms. And so it's always like you feel there's always this eternal change. And then suddenly there comes a short moment where probably the clouds are opening, the wind is ceasing, and then you see this very peaceful light. These moments when the peaceful light is coming, this is like something, it's a holy moment. which gives you a lot of peace. So I would say it's the peaceful places, because there's the biggest fight, you find also the biggest peace.
Sort of like a calm,
Yeah.
calm before or the center of the storm.
Yeah.
Would you say you're spiritual?
Yeah, of course. Of course. I mean, if you climb on these big lines, you have to. I mean, I'm not believing in kind of a Christian God, but I believe in the power of the universe, I remember, for example, when we climbed Skretbecken and you come up and you're really high up there, and then you see the sun on the horizon, which is completely different than the sun is here in Italy or the sun in the Rockies. Yeah, it has some kind of this feeling like Elysium. So you can understand what Vikings, what old cultures means when they talked about Valhalla or Elysium, because it's just this light that is getting into you. It's changing something in you. And then especially also when you climb on Fincona and Senja, you have the mixture out of very steep exposed ice and the light, the northern light, and then the ocean behind you. And all this together is like creating like this feeling you are lost in space. Like when you climb the last pitch up there on Fincona, you have not only the three-dimensional being on a climb with all the abyss below you, you have also the vastness of the ocean behind you and the sky above you with this crazy light. So it's hard for the human brain, but on the other side, it's awesome too, because it makes everything you do so it just doesn't matter. You're just there and you do it and just be in the moment and enjoy it. Yeah.
Do you feel like there's a timelessness to yourself and your experience? Maybe I'm going out on a limb here, but do you feel like do you believe in like reincarnation or sort of like a through line or anything like that? Like it seems like maybe where I'm grasping at a straw here is that it seems like this continuum is important to you.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. I mean, my hashtag is Eternal Quest. So there you have it. This is, I think, one of the most precious things we human have, that we have this curiosity and this drive and this desire towards the light. And with the light, I don't mean something religious. It's not religious, as I said, in terms of Christian way, but in a way of knowledge. But on the other side, also towards the unknown. And this is something that really, for me, it's like the most fascinating stories in human history are those people that went into the unknown. They went onto a boat, or they took skis and a sledge and they went out, or they went up on a mountain and didn't know what's going on up there. And with ice climbing, it's this strong unknown that comes back every winter. Like yesterday, I climbed for the 63rd time Breppentowns here in Cogne, and people can say, "Oh, you climbed it so many times." Yeah, but it was fresh again, and it was an adventure again, because it's the unknown. You don't know what's going on, if this little pillar will hold or not. And so, yeah, I think this is what is this continuum you talk about in ice climbing, like desire for the unknown.
It's like a very tangible and obvious renewal every year. Like
yeah,
there's a seasonality that we all experience, but I find that living in the city, especially, it's like you can remove yourself from so much of the changing of the seasons. With the wildness. Did you always know you were seeking those sort of like infinite experiences, or is that something that like you developed? Because like I'll say in the context for me, it's very easy for me to get stuck in sort of like a routine of work and obligations and things like that. And so for me, like, getting out into nature really helps me reset. But it seems like you've really kind of designed your pursuits, your life around sort of like that way of being almost.
No, I think this is so strange it might sound, but the dreams I had already, like, as I can remember when I was a kid, little baby kid in Chamonix, I was always sitting there looking up the high mountains, or also like in the Côte de Mille where I learned skiing, there's these big ice climbs. And I saw these ice climbs as a kid and had not even a really idea what it is, these big icicles, but I was dreaming already about being up there. So this is kind of this desire is in my blood. For me, when I finished high school, I remember my teachers asked me, what do you want to be? And I said, I want to become an ice climber. And he always said, yeah, it's okay. Like, it's like if somebody says, I want to become an astronaut or whatever. And then it happened, because for me, it was clear. So after high school, I went into the mountains and I never turned back.
Do you ever feel like you were born in the wrong time?
No. I mean, I now I say no. I think when I was younger, more a little bit romantic, yeah, probably I felt it would have been better probably to be in another century where something more could be explored. But then again, when I saw Norway now, there's so much to explore, and these planets offer so much still to see. And I lose more and more the interest in seeing it globally. It's more like a personal growth also, and a personal journey. And everybody can step on this personal journey, because at the end, as I said, with ice climbing, the fantastic thing is these things, they are forming every winter fresh. When you're the first person to go and climb these lines, it feels like being the first human ever to do it. So it doesn't matter if somebody climbed it probably 10 or 20 years ago. It's for you that is important. And I think this is what makes the journey so great.
We wanted to talk about Rjukan, and we can talk about, the upcoming festival and things like that. But to help set the frame of reference for folks, I've seen numbers all over the place, but over 150 ice falls, pitches from 1 to 17 in length, difficulties up to, WI7, M10. Can you maybe provide a little bit more context for Rjukan, and, what can people expect if they go there?
I mean, what people can expect here is it's more Euro style climbing, or let's say in the States, like Bozeman style climbing, Highlight Canyon. Or if we talk, as I said, in the Rockies, it's more like a little bit a mixture out of Hefner Creek and Field. Don't expect to have the big lines there, but you get already a very good idea of what ice climbing in Norway means. So you have on one side, you have the Vemork Gorge, where Jufsøla and Rjukanfossen and Sabotørfossen are situated in. So this is great multi-pitch climbing in there.
Sabotørfossen, as in literally like sabotage. Okay,
yeah,
so
sabotage.
Historical.
It goes back to the history of Second World War, when Nazi Germany used the plant there to produce the heavy water for the atomic bomb. So this place has a lot of very, very deep history in Second World War. Not nice history, but if you're there and there's a museum in the exactly above the Vemork Gorge in the power plant, which is still working, it's worth visiting it because it's an important part of our history, and so absolutely recommended to visit this museum. And then you have the Rjukan area, which is above Vemork, which is like a Hefner Creek. Very nice. Routes up to M10. Cragging, one pitch, awesome. We do the festival there. And then you have a little bit spread out the Mähl area, the Mähl arena, where you have the famous Hauksfossen, which is one of the more serious climbs of Rjukan. And then you have up the Gaustertoppen, where also ski areas, but there you have also some good ice climbing up there. Not very difficult, but very reliable for conditions. And of course, we have to talk about this famous grade 7 whatever climb. I mean, I'm not a big fan of grades anyhow, but there is this climb of called Lipton in the Vemork Gorge, which made probably Rjukan so famous. The only thing I can say, yeah, it's a great climb, but it's also an extremely dangerous climb, and a lot of people died on this climb. So it's not to underestimate. Even so, it's just a roadside attraction. You have to be very careful with this climb. Judge the condition rightly. It's not something that you just do because somebody on Facebook did it and you just want to tick a number. Because, as I said, I have seen personally people die there. So very careful with this climb. If you are not a very experienced climber, and if you don't understand the nature of ice, how it reacts to temperature cycles from warm to cold, because this is what can happen in Rjukan a lot. It can rain for 5-6 days and then it can become very cold again. And if you have no understanding of what that means for an ice climb, then let your tools away from this climb. It's also that I can say right away, this is kind of a traverse climb, and this traverse snaps regularly off these icicles, and people cannot put any ice screws into these icicles. If you are climbing on this thing, the only safe way to do it is kind of solo it. So it's not, and there's little possibilities to get some rock protections in sometimes when they are not iced up. So you can probably place a camp there, but as I said, this is an expert place. And even so, in some years it becomes really fat. It's exactly in this year's an easy, like it's probably technically seen a grade 5 then. But exactly in this year's it's so dangerous even more because then it becomes so heavy. And that's where a lot of these tragical accidents happen, because people just think, oh, I want to come into the club of the grade 7 climbers. And then suddenly, it all falls off. So careful with this climb.
Noted. Luckily, Rjukan caters to a wide range of abilities and grades.
Yeah, it's just this one climb. I just said, but this climb has an international attraction. That's just why I talk. I mean, this is 1 out of 150, you said. You can have a good time on Hemsedal, for example. I climbed it so many times, and it's just next to it. It's this awesome yellow pillar of beautiful ice, and you can have a good time there. And or if it's cold enough, Hauksfossen will give you also a really impressive feeling, and it's also proper climbing. And then, of course, you have all this awesome, like, easier lines that are still great climbs, as I said, like Rjukanfossen, like Saboteurfossen, like the all the climbs on the bridge down at Vemork, which are multi-pitch. So there's a lot of things to do. They are safe. And as I said, from grade 1 up to grade 5, you find a lot of stuff to do there.
Maybe you mentioned this, but it's hard to keep track of these names because they sound very foreign to me. Hauksfossen and
Hauksfossen.
Jufsäuler. Because these are on your top 100 list.
Yeah, classics. They are like classics, like here in Cogne, like Repentance or Nemesis in the Rockies. This is things. I think if you are a passionate ice climber, once in your lifetime, you have to do this. They are just awesome climbs, awesome places, super cool.
Just logistically, to get to Rjukan, most people will fly into Oslo, and then it's about a 3-hour drive, give or take.
Yeah, so fly to Oslo Gardermoen, not to Top. There's 2 airports, and Top is far to south. It's not worth it. No, Oslo Gardermoen, and then there's either a possibility to get there with a bus. It's a bit complicated. Then you need first to take the train, which is really easy to take because it's just super quick, the flight target train. To Oslo Central Station, then take the bus to Rjukan. But then in Rjukan, in fact, you need a car to get up to these places because it's too far to walk. So you need to rent a car. Gardermoen, 3 hours drive, more or less, depending, like always in Norway, on weather conditions. But the driving, I have to say, that's also a thing which is a big part of ice climbing in Rjukan, in Norway, is the driving in Norway in the winter, which can be really adventurous. The Rjukan drive is okay for beginners to start with. You get a first feeling of how shitty the roads in Norway are, and hopefully they rent you out a car with the spikes on the tires.
Do you have to specifically ask for them, or are they just by default? It would seem like by default.
It depends on rental company to rental company. Usually it's not like in the Rockies where they rent you out a 4-wheel drive with all season tires and all this crap. No, in Norway you will get always proper winter tires, and in the north of Norway they always give you the tires with the studs. Mm-hmm. In Oslo, it depends. Some companies are giving to you, some others not. I mean, driving with studs is something completely normal because, I mean, as I said, in Norway, there's no straight roads. There's one turn after another. And especially in the turns, there's the ice. I remember when we were there with the camper van, we had normal winter tires, and I averaged a medium of 40 kilometers an hour on this road. So it takes a long time. So even so, you don't make the mistake. You take a Google Maps and you see, oh yeah, from Rjukan to Hemsedal is just 180 kilometers. So it's like 2 hours drive. No. It's like 4 to 5 hours drive. So therefore, I think when you drive from Gardermoen to Rjukan, you take first the highway, which is a normal highway, and then you get more and more into the shitty roads. And then the last 40 kilometers is shitty roads, and it's just 40 kilometers. So you have 1 hour, a little taste of what it will be. And very important, if you are in Rjukan and you want to climb down in Vemork Gorge, unless you have rented a 4-wheel drive with studs, don't dive down to the bridge. You won't get up again. This road is like super steep. And it gives you also the crazy feeling maybe how it is when all the tires are not turning and you're still driving on the way down. So it can be, you can produce already enough adrenaline that you don't have to go climbing anymore when you're driving down to Vemork Bridge. So park up there, walk down. It's 4 minutes more of walking, but it saves you probably a lot of trouble, either going down or coming back up again. I talk from experience, as you can imagine. So,
but if people do want more of the taster of climbing in Rjukan in Norway to a greater extent, you have the festival coming up in early February.
Yeah,
there's been a festival running since 1993, typically by the local climbing club. But then I guess it went away for a few years, and I guess you've helped bring it back alongside Norona, Petzl, and Scarpa. Can you talk about this year's festival? What can people expect?
Yeah. So this year's festival is great, especially when you are not so psyched about the experience of driving on shitty roads, because the festival, you fly into Oslo, then we meet at the Norrøna house. There's also the Norrøna headquarters, but also a climbing gym. It's a very nice venue, a restaurant, everything. Oh, wow. And so this will be on Thursday. We kick off the event there. And then next morning, we take all together a bus, and we are driving with the bus to Rjukan. Then we start climbing. Then Friday night, we have a great program in the Rjukan house, as it's tradition with the festival. So Robert Kaspersen will be there giving a presentation, and very well-known, internationally well-known alpinist. Then I will have a talk about ice climbing in Norway. And then on Saturday, we have the clinics again. Then we bring back the speed climbing competition. Speed climbing competition has been always a big part of it's like on a easy grade 3 climb, 2 guys are climbing to each other. Winner goes in the next round. So it was always fun. It's a friendly competition, but it has been part of the festival since ever. And then in the evening, we have presentations again at the Rjukan house. We have a party. Sunday, we climb again. And then everybody's going back into the bus and is driving back to Oslo, where there's one more dinner at the Norrøna house. And then it's time to go back. So I think it's a great possibility for people that want to discover Rjukan. You can also ski. So we have on Friday, there's only ice climbing clinics, but on Saturday, Sunday, we have also ski touring clinics up on Gaustatoppen. So I think for everybody who wants to join, it's a great possibility to get a cool first insight, fun insight in what ice climbing and skiing in Norway is. And then, of course, it's interesting for everybody out of Norway, because Norwegian krone has a really low exchange rate. Like, it's way better for us with euro or US dollars to get there in the moment. It's cheaper than all the years before. So I think it's a good moment to do it.
And just for specific details, it's from Thursday, the 6th of February to the 10th of Monday.
Yeah, exactly. So as I said, Thursday we start in Oslo. There will be already climbing action in the climbing gym, and there will be also some short talks and some short films in their own movie theater that you have in this house there. Also, the travel to the Norrøna house is super simple. You go out of the plane on Gardermoen, you go on this train, on this high-speed train, 30 minutes in the high-speed train, and then you walk for 5 minutes and you are there in Lysaker station. So it's really, really, for the logistics, it couldn't be any simpler.
Yeah, I think so. For this particular festival, you're offering accommodation, but if someone's planning the trip on their own, where would you recommend staying? You know, you mentioned the hostel.
So we offer the accommodation, but we offer also without accommodation. For example, if somebody just wants to join for the clinics and for the evening program, that's possible too, and then have his own accommodation. So where to stay in Rjukan? I mean, the classic place to stay is the old school hostel from Jacob Fink. He organized the festival for years after Marius Olsen did it in the beginning. So he's also with in the Orga team this year. And his place is like the place. I mean, it's a hostel. If it's not your jam to sleep with 16 other people in a room, then it's not your jam. Then don't go there. If you're a social person and you like to talk in the evening, there's a common kitchen where everybody sits, then it's a good place. Other options are the Hytteby, central situated in Rjukan, where you can rent huts. There's different campsites. They are renting out huts too, so this is more the budget version. If you have a higher budget, then I really recommend to find something up on Gaustertoppen, even if it's more driving. If you're probably cross-country skiing, it's nice to be there. Nice modern apartments. And then there's, of course, different kind of hotels. Like with the festival, we are in the Rjukan Hotel, which is very nice situated because you are very close to Vemork at the end of, because Rjukan is a long, long stretch village. Like it's like 5 kilometers long, like this long canyon. And we are just at the end where it's going up to the Vemork and to the Cogne sites. And then, there's different other hotels. It's Norway also. Always expect a little bit higher prices there. So I would recommend renting a hut or something. This is mostly the most budget version. Or the old school hostel.
So we just wrapped up talking about Rjukan, which is the bulk of today's conversation. But you'd mentioned other areas earlier, but maybe just sort of like to offer, again, like a geographical overview. There's more climbing in the north, and you talked about a few places. Do you want to just sharing maybe a little bit more about quickly just some other areas to climb in Norway?
Yeah, of course. I mean, so Rjukan, as I said, it's just one little part. So you have the west coast where you have Eidfjord, where you have Gudvangen. Then you have Øvre Ada, where the Vettisfossen is, in Jotunheim, and all these places where there's a lot of climbing. Then you have the Setesdal area with Oppdalen and so on, where there's a lot of climbing. Of course, you have Romsdalen. That's all going to the middle towards Trondheim. And then we go up to the north, and there you have in the whole Troms area. So, for example, you have the Spansdalen with Henrikafossen, which is a awesome grade 4 climb, long grade 4 climb, with lots of other climbs there, like Søylefossen is a really committed climb there. You have Bardujord with a lot of big lines like Skretbekken, Ruppenbecken, like big lines. Of course, you have Senja with the famous Finkona, but also a lot of mixed climbing there and other ice climbs, easier ice climbs there too. And then the more you go up to the north, of course, you have Lyngen. Lyngen is mainly known for ski touring, but there's also some good ice climbing, of course, there too, in different places. You can also Google it out and find information.
I've been calling it Lyngen this whole time, so it's Lyngen.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I mean, I'm not perfect in Norwegian. Probably Lyngen is also okay.
I have no idea.
I have no idea too. Therefore. So yeah, I mean, when you look on the map, Norway is a long country, and in fact, there's ice climbing all over from the south to the north. And then just over the border, when you go to the north, there's in Sweden Abisko, which is very well known for ice climbing. There's a lot of, let's say, medium grade ice climbings, and that's early season too. Like this is like those guys I saw, for example, they started climbing also there already a month ago. Because it's so in the country and so high up. So this is kind of a safe destination if you want to climb up north in Scandinavia, Abisko. Very close to the border of Norway.
All right. So we had a handful of questions from the audience, in particular from Raymond. And so Raymond, hopefully we covered quite a few of the questions you asked. But one important one is, what are some of the best resources for getting beta for ice climbing around Norway? Are there like Facebook groups or, there's a few guidebooks, etc. But
yeah, there is Facebook groups, of course, for all the major areas in climbing clubs. So either you have to join those groups. I mean, there's a Rjukan climbing club, climbing group on Facebook, a dedicated ice climbing site. There is for Setesdal ice climbing site. There is for Oppdal, of course, a dedicated site. There is for Lærdal, Hemsedal, a dedicated Facebook site. So I think Facebook is a good way. There is some PDF topos if you do some research for different areas like Lærdal. You can find still a PDF topo. There's for Bardujord up in the north still a dedicated PDF topo. I mean, on Senja, you can find information with Bent Wieder, the guy who was really doing a lot up there for ice climbing with his lodge. So he is the man to contact there for information. And yeah, as I said, there's a guidebook for Rjukan, there's a guidebook for Oppdal, and there's also a guidebook for the north, for the Arctic ice, where we do the festival, from Christian Dramstad. You can find it on Friflyt webpage. It's called Arctic Ice. So there is some guidebooks around. I'm started to work, but I don't know when it will be finished, on a selected ice climbing guidebook, history book about Norway, where I will present some areas, but this will take some years, I guess. So it's in the coming. And beside this, of course, Eidfjord 2. There has been a website, an old website that is not more really curated. So I guess, as I said, Norway is still an adventure. So you need to be open for discovery and to embrace the journey of discovering.
So you have to go there and find out for yourself, Raymond. Don't want to spoil the surprise. Thank you very much, Matthias. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Aaron.
Matthias has climbed over 1,000 frozen waterfalls, and you can see his top 100 list on his website, matthias-scherer.net, and you can also find that in the show notes. To follow along with his adventures, check out his Instagram at Matthias Scherer. So his first name is spelled Matthias, Scherer, Scherer. Matthias Scherer. Want to join for the Norrona Ice Festival in Rjukan? It runs from February 6th through the 10th, and you can find all the details on the website, adventure.norrona.com, and then you can search around for the Ice Fest. Lastly, Matthias would like to thank his sponsors for supporting his adventures, Norrona, Petzl, Scarpa, and Glorify. As always, thank you to Hannah Noel for providing the intro music, and Andrew Solomon for editing. And that was my cat, Kokos. Thanks for listening, and we will see you in a few weeks after the holidays.